Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to have a little bit of a different video. I think it'll be a fun video, but as you can see, today we're doing a little bit of a head-to-head, and we're going to see if this $25 Benchmark Foolproof can go head-to-head with these two bottles. Let's get these poured up, and I'll be right back to start this video. Alright, so we have got these all poured and mixed up and labeled on the bottom. So as I do this, as I go from, I guess, y'all's right to left, I'm going to label on the screen what I'm drinking so that as I'm drinking it, y'all know what I'm drinking, but as I'm doing this, I won't know what I'm drinking. So it's not a double blind, it's, one of three bottles. I might be able to pick them out, but I really think the one that poses the most interesting matchup here is the Weller Foolproof and the Benchmark Foolproof, because I've had both of those semi-recently, and they honestly have a pretty similar flavor profile. So I'm sitting here wondering, the point of this video is to try to figure out, is that, $200 bottle of Weller Foolproof, is that worth buying? Or should you just go ahead and get the $25 Benchmark Foolproof? Will I even be able to taste the difference? This video we're going to find out, so let's get right into it. It's hot. It's hot. Before I get into this, I should say the Foolproof Weller is 114, the Stagg 22B is 130, and the Benchmark is 125. So in terms of proof alone, I might be able to point this out, but let's just see which ones I prefer, ranking them without knowing. A little bit of like a cherry, not a little bit of that cherry popsicle we're used to in Buffalo Trace. Some berries kinda, and it's very fruity nose, but it's definitely some like grainy, yes, kind of oaky, but almost like a minty grain, like a rye spice on the nose there. Let's go into the palate. The berry note continues into the palate, and it's good. It's definitely hot. Maybe a little graham cracker in there, like a berry graham cracker. It's hot. My guess is that that's probably not the Weller Foolproof, but we're going to keep going. Some berry graham crackers, a little bit of it's grainy too. So glass one, it's good. It definitely has some of those traditional Buffalo Trace tasting notes, some cherry popsicle, sort of that grapey berry, almost, I don't think this one has orange, but you can definitely tell from the nose and even more so on the palate that that's definitely a Buffalo Trace product. Just a very hot version of a Buffalo Trace product. So let's get in to glass number two. That one was really hot. I'm going to be interested to see how these other two compare to that in terms of the proof and how hot they are. Okay, so this one's a lot lighter. This one is like a light caramel vanilla, getting away from that dark berry oaky. This one is a lot lighter oak, but it obviously, I would say, still has that sort of typical Buffalo Trace kind of like grapey kind of cherry popsicle note that I personally get on every single Buffalo Trace product. Yeah, I'm getting a lot of vanilla, like almost vanilla pudding. That's really good. That is really good. I'd say the palate is very similar to the nose. It's creamy. It's like vanilla. Definitely some caramel on the nose, on the palate. Not as much as the nose, but definitely some caramel transferring into the palate. This is delicious. That is really good, and I will say, if that is the Benchmark Foolproof, then I'm already a huge fan of it, because that was an incredible first sip. Let's go in for sip number two. So that sip, I got some orange and vanilla almost like dreamsicle, but there's like a light caramel on the back end. That is a phenomenal bourbon. I love that. So I don't know, that might be the Weller Foolproof, it might be the Benchmark. I don't think that's the Stagg just because of how light it was. But let's get into glass number 3 and let's just see how this matches up to the first two. So as of right now, I would say I like this one the most. This one was really good. It was just I think on the palate, I think the heat kind of overpowered some of those nice notes I got off the nose. And I'm a big fan of, barrel proof stuff. So the higher proof stuff doesn't really necessarily intimidate me. But I would say the first one is not, it's hard to pick out some of those notes with how hot it is. So this one, it's definitely not as complex as the first two. This leads me to think it's the Benchmark. I'm getting definitely some of the proof on the nose, which it is 11 proof points higher than that Weller Foolproof. So, yeah, and I'm getting kind of like a chlorine kind of note. Okay, so that time I did get some of that vanilla. Definitely some of that traditional Buffalo Trace. Okay, so that's like more herbal on that one. Maybe some mint in there, but this one, it's not as like creamy, silky caramel. It doesn't have as much of those fruity notes as the first two, but on the nose, it's kind of getting some like baking spices, a little earthy almost, but there's still like that lingering Buffalo Trace fruity note. I would say that's definitely a little hotter than this one. It's a little more of like an earthy, grain forward sip, I would say. But if you sat here and told me that there was a $175 price difference in the secondary market between two of these and another one, I would not believe that there was a $175 difference. I would say these are all really good. My guess right now is that this is Stagg, Weller Foolproof, Benchmark. On the screen, y'all will already know what the three are. But don't click off the video yet if I was wrong, if I was right. We'll see in the end. That's really good. It is really, really, really good. I think at the end of the day, if you told me that any one of these was a $100 bottle of whiskey, I would probably believe you. If you told me it was $150, I'd probably believe you. I think this one, just the complexity, it looks a little darker than the middle, which makes me wonder if this is maybe the Benchmark. I struggle to believe this isn't the Foolproof because it did have more complexity, I think, than glass number 3. But yeah, if you told me any of these were allocated expensive bourbons, I would 100% believe you. It's kind of just the whole point of this experiment is to see, is allocated bourbon worth what we're paying for it, or are there other bottles on the shelf that are worth far less money and taste just as good? So at face value here, I would say that glass 1 and 2 are a little bit better than glass 3. Specifically, I would say glass 2 is better than glass 3. I'm really hoping glass 2 is Weller Foolproof. If I guess this to be Weller Foolproof and it not giving it a great review, then I'm going to be pretty disappointed that I spent my money on it. But let's get one more sip on number 3. Yeah, it's really good, and it's like the more sips I take in number 3, the better it gets. But the proof kind of just hits the back of my throat and the back of my tongue and makes me really... Let me get one more sip of this. I'm almost 100% certain that this is Weller Foolproof. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to be extremely disappointed in myself. But I'm almost 100% certain. That's really good. That's really freaking good. So I'm going to go off camera for a minute. I'm going to finish up the rankings, do some final thoughts. Okay, so I took some time to sort of revisit each glass. These two are definitely much better than this one. I think this will be my first option in the rankings, actually. It's higher proof, it's more complex. My guess is that it's Stagg, and looking at it, I think it's definitely darker than the other ones, which maybe I need to fix that in the next blind, is start doing double blinds. I've thought about doing, sort of like a 1 ounce capsule box of just like 20 different bottles and do random blinds where it's completely double blinded. I have no idea what I'm sipping, so it removes all the bias. But I think this glass would actually be my number one. It's just, there's more complexity, there's more proof. I love that proof. I love that higher heat, and it brings some beautiful notes in there with it, the berries and sort of that grainy, oaky. It's a lot darker, and I really personally love that in a bourbon. So I'm going to say that's my number one in ranking, is that. And then number two is going to actually be the glass in the middle. This was just absolutely delicious. I think that was Buffalo Trace just on full display. I'm guessing it's the Weller Full Proof, 114 proof. I think that is just about as perfect of a proof point as you can get. You know, some people don't love the 130 proof stuff, which is why, you know, maybe not everyone's gonna love it. But I'm assuming that's Stagg. I'm assuming that's Weller Full Proof. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to be shocked, not because I'm great at this, but just because you can kind of taste some of the youthfulness in this one. I'm going to sit here and assume that this is Benchmark Full Proof. Let's look at the bottom of the glasses and see how we did. So my number one was, in fact, Stagg 22B. No surprise there. That's a great pour. What we're wondering, though, is this glass, well, I guess y'all know, but what I'm wondering, is this either Weller Full Proof or is this Benchmark Full Proof? This is Weller Full Proof. So there is definitely a distinct difference between 2 and 3. This will actually be Benchmark Full Proof, and there's definitely a distinct difference between 2 and 3. This is much more complex. You can kind of taste that it is a nicer whiskey. This is higher proof. It definitely feels a little bit more youthful on the palate. But is it $175 worse than Weller Full Proof? I would say absolutely not. I think it's a great alternative. It didn't stand up to the other two today, but the competition was two really, really good whiskeys. So if you haven't tried Benchmark Full Proof, I would 100% recommend trying it for $25. I do not honestly think there's a better whiskey on the shelf. We might continue this series and just see how Benchmark Full Proof matches up to other whiskeys, but for today, it went Stagg, Weller Full Proof, and Benchmark Full Proof. Let me know what other blinds y'all think I should do. I have a bunch of the Tater bottles, and most of them are open. Whatever y'all think, so I'm more than happy to do any blinds, or if y'all think the double blind idea would be really fun. This video just kind of showed that, you know, sometimes the higher price whiskey is actually better whiskey, but that's not always the case, and I think a double blind would even go further towards randomizing and just removing all the bias. So thank y'all for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and as always, we will see y'all in the next video.